The ring in the old house. The town of Hollow Brook was the kind of place where time seemed to stand still. It had one main street with a few shops, a crumbling schoolhouse, and a collection of modest homes that looked as if they had sprouted from the earth like the oaks surrounding them. It was the kind of town where everyone knew everyone else's business and nothing much ever happened, or so the adults liked to believe. But for the children, Hollow Brook was a different story. They knew better. Tommy Henderson, a boy of 12, was new to town. His family had moved to Hollow Brook in late August, just before school started, when the days were still long and the nights just starting to hint at the coming fall. They had moved into a small house on Maple Street, a short walk from the main square. Tommy hated it. He missed the city, the noise, the lights, and most of all, his friends. Hollow Brook was too quiet, too still. But the worst part was the other kids. From the moment he arrived, Tommy had felt their eyes on him, watching from the shadows of porches, behind the cracked windows of old houses. They didn't speak to him, didn't invite him to join their games. It was as if they were waiting for something. On his third day in town, Tommy decided he'd had enough. After dinner, he told his parents he was going out for a walk. His mother, too busy unpacking, only nodded. His father grunted something about being back before dark. He stepped outside, the evening air thick with the scent of pine, and something else he couldn't quite place, something old. He wandered aimlessly for a while, kicking stones and listening to the rustle of leaves in the trees. Eventually, he found himself near the edge of town, where the houses thinned out and the forest crept closer to the road. That's when he saw it, the old house. It sat back from the road, partially hidden by overgrown bushes and towering trees. The house was 2 stories tall, with peeling paint and broken shutters that dangled precariously from the windows. The roof sagged in the middle, and the front door hung slightly ajar, as if inviting anyone foolish enough to enter. Tommy had heard whispers about the house from the other kids at school. They called it Grim House and said it was cursed. No one knew who had built it or how long it had been there, but everyone knew to stay away. Everyone except Tommy. He stood in front of the house, his heart pounding in his chest. This was his chance. If he went inside, the other kids would have to respect him. They couldn't ignore him anymore. He took a deep breath, squared his shoulders, and marched up the cracked stone path to the front door. Inside, the air was thick and stale, like an attic that had been sealed shut for years. The floorboards creaked under his weight, and the dim light from the setting sun barely penetrated the dusty windows. The house smelled of rot and decay, of things long dead and forgotten. But Tommy pressed on, determined to explore every inch of the place. He wandered through the rooms, his footsteps echoing in the silence. There was nothing remarkable about the house, just old furniture covered in white sheets, cobwebs hanging from the ceiling, and the occasional scurry of something small and unseen in the walls. But then he found the ring. It was lying on a small table in what must have once been the parlor, half hidden under a thick layer of dust. It was an old ring, tarnished silver with a large dark stone in the center. Tommy picked it up, turning it over in his hands. It felt heavy, important. As he held it, he felt a strange chill run down his spine, but he brushed it off. It was probably valuable. Maybe it was worth a lot of money. He slipped the ring into his pocket and made his way back outside, feeling a mix of excitement and dread. The sun was almost gone, the sky a deep purple, and the shadows were long and dark. When he got home, his parents didn't notice the ring. They barely noticed him. But the next day at school, word spread quickly. Somehow, the other kids knew. Maybe they had seen him, or maybe it was just the way things worked in a town like Hollow Brook. By lunchtime, a group of older boys had cornered him behind the school. "You found something in that house, didn't you?" One of them, a tall boy named Carl, sneered. "Give it to us." Tommy hesitated. There was something about the ring, something that told him it wasn't just a piece of jewelry, but he was outnumbered, and the boys were bigger than him. Reluctantly, he pulled the ring from his pocket and handed it over. Carl snatched it from his hand, grinning. "Good boy," he said. "Maybe you're not so dumb after all." But that night, Carl didn't come home. His parents called the police, but there was no sign of him. The next day, another boy, who had been with Carl, took the ring, and he disappeared too. By the end of the week, all 3 boys who had taken the ring were gone. The town was in a panic. Parents kept their children inside, and rumors flew like wildfire. Some said the boys had run away, others whispered about the curse of Grim House. But Tommy knew the truth. He could feel it in his bones, in the cold that seemed to seep into his skin whenever he thought about the ring. He tried to tell his parents, but they didn't listen. They were too wrapped up in their own fears, too busy talking to the other parents, the police, anyone who would listen. Tommy was invisible to them, just like he had been when they decided to move to Hollow Brook. Then, one night, Tommy woke up in a cold sweat. He knew what he had to do. He had to return the ring. It was the only way to make things right. He slipped out of bed, grabbed a flashlight, and headed back to Grim House. The town was eerily quiet, the streets deserted. The house loomed ahead of him, a dark silhouette against the night sky. The door was still slightly open, just as he had left it. He stepped inside, his heart pounding in his chest. The house felt different this time, more alive. The air was thick with the scent of decay, and the walls seemed to close in around him. He made his way to the parlor, where he had found the ring. The table was still there, covered in dust, but the ring was gone. A voice echoed through the house, soft and cold. "You shouldn't have taken it." Tommy spun around, his flashlight beam cutting through the darkness. There was no one there, but the voice persisted, growing louder, more insistent. "You took what wasn't yours. Now you must pay." The floor beneath him began to tremble, and the walls seemed to pulse with a life of their own. The house was angry, and it wanted revenge. Tommy tried to run, but the door slammed shut, trapping him inside. The walls closed in, the ceiling lowered, and the darkness swallowed him whole. When the police arrived the next morning, they found the house empty. There was no sign of Tommy, just like there had been no sign of the other boys. It was as if they had never existed. And in a way, they hadn't. The townspeople of Hollow Brook whispered about Grim House for years to come. Some said it was cursed, others said it was haunted. But the children knew the truth. The house wasn't cursed. It was a test of honesty, of bravery, of what it meant to be a child in a world that demanded too much and gave too little. Those who failed the test paid the ultimate price, and those who survived, well, they never spoke of the house or the ring or the boys who went missing. They simply lived with the knowledge that some things are better left alone, that some secrets are better left buried. And the house, it still stands on the outskirts of town, waiting for the next child who thinks they can outsmart it, waiting for the next test. Because in Hollow Brook, Nothing ever really disappears. It just waits. If you enjoyed this video, give it a thumbs up. And if you want to see more like it, hit that subscribe button and bell for more. We'd also love to hear from you in the comments below. What story resonated most with you, and how did it make you feel?